U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance arrived in Israel today at the start of high-level talks aimed at salvaging the fragile ceasefire with Hamas and pushing forward President Donald Trump's Gaza peace plan.
Vice President Vance arrived in Israel at the start of a three-day visit with the enforcement of the Gaza ceasefire and advancing the Trump plan topping his agenda. The visit follows Monday's meeting between Netanyahu, Trump envoy Steve Witkoff, and Jared Kushner as the U.S. pushes Israel and Egypt to keep the ceasefire on track after several violations by Hamas. Ahead of the visit, the Hostages and Missing Families Forum sent a letter to the U.S. administration thanking them for their efforts, but urging continued pressure until, quote, every body and every soul is brought home. Vance is due to meet Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, Defense Minister Israel Katz, and President Isaac Herzog, with discussions expected to focus on the return of hostage bodies that are still held in Gaza and the security arrangements for the next stage of the agreement. Prime Minister Netanyahu told the Knesset that he will discuss security challenges and political opportunities with the visiting vice president.
ואנחנו נשוחח על שני דברים, בעיקר שני דברים. על האתגרים הביטחוניים שעומדים בפנינו וההזדמנויות המדיניות שעומדות בפנינו. נגבר על האתגרים, נממש את ההזדמנויות. בזכות עוצמתנו ובשיתוף פעולה חוזר עם נשיא ארצות הברית, אני מאמין שנביא עוד הסכמי שלום עם מדינות במרחב.
Ahead of the Vance visit, U.S. President Donald Trump sent another warning to Hamas to adhere to the ceasefire and stop the violence.
In addition, you have Israel would go in 2 minutes if I asked him to go in. I could tell him, go in and take care of it. But right now, we haven't said that. We're going to give it a little chance, and hopefully there will be a little less violence. But right now, you know, they're violent people. Hamas has been very violent. But they don't have the backing of Iran anymore. They don't have the backing of really anybody anymore. They have to be good. And if they're not good, they'll be eradicated.
Meanwhile, the fragile Gaza ceasefire is holding for now. The IDF has begun marking the separation line of control by the IDF. Israeli officials are also taking aim at Hamas claims that it does not know the location of the remaining 15 Israeli hostage bodies. More from ILTV's Steve Leibovitz.
The IDF has begun installing massive yellow concrete blocks to mark the yellow line, a key boundary in Gaza under the current ceasefire agreement. Each marker stands 3.5 meters tall, painted bright yellow, and is topped with a yellow metal sign. They're being placed every 200 meters, adjusted to terrain, and creating a clear physical border for troops on the ground. The yellow line drawn by mediators covers over half of the Gaza Strip, about 53% of the territory, mostly in rural regions. The IDF said the move is to provide tactical clarity and maintain security while the ceasefire holds. The IDF says it will continue marking the line in the coming period while remaining focused on eliminating threats to the troops. The yellow line now takes shape, a concrete sign of a fragile calm. The ceasefire between Israel and Hamas remains under severe strain after a series of violations by Hamas, IDF military response, and diplomatic interventions. For Israel, the focus still remains the enforcement of the ceasefire and the return of all hostage bodies.
As Hamas continues to make the excuse they cannot locate them, let's make something very clear. Hamas dragged our hostages into Gaza and either murdered them on October 7th or during captivity, with the sole exception of a soldier taken in 2014. No one misplaces people they kidnapped. Any suggestion that Hamas doesn't know where the hostages are is not just an excuse, it's part of their propaganda.
The opening of the Rafah crossing with Egypt remains on hold. Israel says it will remain closed until Hamas returns all the remains of the slain Israeli hostages held in Gaza. As of now, 13 bodies have been handed over out of the 28 promised under the deal. The coming days are crucial for whether this truce can transform into something lasting or devolve into a return to war.
And meanwhile, Israel woke up earlier today to another development in the hostage return situation. Last night, Hamas returned the body of a fallen Israeli hostage while many families continue to wait for their loved ones. For the latest, we go to India. Naftali, India, what can you tell us?
Yes, Lidar, the body of 41-year-old Tal Haimi was handed over to Israel last night. Haimi fell in battle while defending kibbutz near Yitzhak on October 7th. His body was abducted into Gaza. Hours after the casket arrived at the Abu Kabir Forensic Institute, the IDF confirmed his identity. Haimi, the chief of his kibbutz civil defense squad, was killed in a firefight at the community gate as Hamas forces advanced. His family was informed of his death in December 2023 and held a funeral then, but has since been waiting for the return of his body for 745 days. The casket, transferred through the Red Cross, was draped with an Israeli flag and escorted to Tel Aviv. Haimi has now been posthumously promoted to sergeant major in reserves. He is survived by his wife Ella and their 4 children, including a son born 7 months after he was killed. With his return, 13 bodies have now been handed over, while 15 remain in Gaza. Israel says Hamas is obligated to return all of them under the ceasefire terms. Hamas claims some bodies are still missing under rubble, while Israel believes Hamas is deliberately holding the bodies. Under the agreement, all 20 living hostages were released on October 13th. But anger is rising over the stalled return of the deceased, as families continue to rally in Tel Aviv's Hostages Square, demanding the remainder be brought home with the same urgency as the living. Meanwhile, small signs of normalcy are emerging among the freed survivors. At a concert this week at Madison Square Garden, Israeli singer Omer Adam played a video of former hostage Matan Angust singing to him during a call the two had not long after Matan was released. And at Ben Gurion Airport, hostage posters are slowly coming down. Yesterday, Danny Miran, the father of former hostage Omri Miran, removed his son's photo, a moment he had waited more than 2 years to experience. At this stage, there are no more living hostages to return. The focus now is on the 15 bodies still in Gaza, as Israel presses for full implementation of the agreement. Back to you.
And joining us now with more on the U.S. Vice President's visit to Israel. And the latest is Ambassador Jeremy Issacharoff, former Israeli ambassador to Germany and former charge d'affaires at the Israeli embassy in Washington, D.C. Thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure.
So let's start with the Vice President's visit. What is the aim of this trip to Israel?
Well, I think the visit probably aims to achieve 2 things. First of all, to reassure Israel that the American commitment to the Trump plan is very clear and strong. And they also understand the concerns of Israel regarding the return and the completion of the first phase of returning all of the deceased hostages to Israel, to their families and for burial. I think this is obviously a key factor in their minds. And I'm sure that they're also concerned of why the process is taking much longer than it was supposed to under the initial 72 hours. And I think that they'll also be looking at trying to, how can I say this diplomatically, ensure that Israel maintains its present stance with respect to the Trump plan and does not overreact to the delay in the return of the hostages. And of course, of the attack on our troops in Rafah a couple of days ago, where 2 of our soldiers were killed. So I think it's a bit of a reassurance and a bit of a sense of keeping Israel in the area of restraint.
Mm-hmm. And on the Israeli side, I mean, what will Prime Minister Netanyahu, what will sort of the political and military leadership try to get out of this, their meetings with the Vice President?
Well, again, I think that they are very concerned at the fact that Hamas is taking so long to complete the first stage of the plan, and the fact that as long as Hamas, and I think that first of all, I think that Hamas could well have more knowledge about the location of the deceased hostages, and they might be using this to consolidate and to increase the time span that they can resuscitate their power, to reinforce their hold on Gaza, and you've seen some pretty brutal executions over the last few days. So as long as the second stage doesn't kick in, and there is some sort of like temporary international force coming in effect, Hamas is remaining in control of the area of Gaza in which Israel is not situated at this point, which is virtually half of Gaza. So I think that the Prime Minister, I would imagine, would want to see clear indications from America that she's intending to pressure all the parties involved, include not just the Hamas, but also Turkey and Qatar, in order to pressure Hamas more to complete the first phase of the withdrawal.
So indeed, a lot of challenges lay ahead. Ambassador Jeremy Sakharov, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you.
On October 7, I was here at the Nova Music Festival. I ran for my life, hid for 7 hours. Terrorists shot me twice. Thankfully, I survived. I'm still dealing with trauma, and I'm not alone. 3 million Israelis are in trauma. They need mental health care or physical rehabilitation. Wounded soldiers, families, and scared children.
Since 1912, Hadassah has been a life-changing force in Israel. Today, Hadassah has 2 world-renowned hospitals, pioneers breakthrough medical research, cares for youth, and has built the much-needed and largest rehabilitation facility in Jerusalem.
Thank you to everyone at Hadassah Hospitals. You've been helping me, and so many others. And a special thanks to one nurse, my mom. I love you.
And in other news, the Knesset winter session opened in Jerusalem with loud arguments, emotional speeches, and sharp political divisions as Israel enters a crucial year of war and political uncertainty. More from ILTV's Devo Klein.
The 4th session of the 25th Knesset began after a 3-month recess, with questions looming over whether the Knesset will dissolve before summer and head to early elections. Speaker Amir Ohana ignited an uproar when he referred to Supreme Court President Yitzhak Amit as a judge. Opposition members shouted him down, and several were removed from the plenary. Ohana then accused the judicial system of, quote, trampling the Knesset, and called for a reset between government branches. President Isaac Herzog, clearly emotional, praised Amit as, quote, Supreme Court President, to strong applause. He warned that Israel's internal divisions were, quote, tearing at our soul during a time of war, urging lawmakers to sit, talk, and restore dignity and respect. Prime Minister Netanyahu acknowledged Amit's role, but refocused on national security, vowing to bring every hostage home and warning against ending the war prematurely. He also announced plans to pass the 2026 budget and a new draft law to enlist 10,000 yeshiva students. Opposition leader Yair Lapid fired back, saying, quote, the Knesset doesn't belong to you. It belongs to the people of Israel. As tensions rise over the ceasefire, the hostage deal, and the draft exemption law, the winter session marks a defining test of leadership and of Israel's ability to remain united.
And not just in Gaza, tensions continue on the Lebanese border amid continuing Israeli enforcement of the ceasefire and Hezbollah violations. Smoke rose over Achiev village in southern Lebanon as Israeli strikes hit Hezbollah infrastructures, with explosions heard across the area. The IDF said its air force struck targets in the Nabatea region after intelligence found Hezbollah attempting to re-establish terror infrastructure along the border. The military described the activity as a clear violation of the U.S. brokered truce with Lebanon that took effect last November, and said Hezbollah continues to rebuild its capabilities. Israel warns that any rehabilitation of tunnels, weapons depots, or command posts poses a direct threat to civilians and troops along the border. The IDF promised to continue operations to remove threats and protect the state of Israel. So far, Israel has carried out over 500 airstrikes against Hezbollah targets in Lebanon since the November 27, 2024 ceasefire took effect. And in other news, the New York City mayoral election is just 2 weeks away, and it's shaping up to be one of the most consequential in years. With rising concerns over anti-Semitism, public safety, and international ties, the outcome won't just impact New Yorkers. It could carry significant implications for the city's Jewish community and its relationship with Israel. Joining us now to discuss is Olivia Reingold, a journalist with the Free Press. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
So, Olivia, this race has garnered not only national attention, but major international attention as well, especially here in Israel. So I want to ask you, what makes this race so consequential, so different from previous races that we've seen?
So Zohran Mamdani, he is the Democratic nominee, and by all measures, he's not only expected to win on Tuesday, November 4th, but it's probably going to be a landslide. Right now, they're focused not on just winning, but the margin of victory, because that is how certain they are of his ascent to City Hall. And even though he's the Democratic nominee, that is not always the way he identified. For most of his political career, he outright called himself a socialist. He is a dues-paying member of the Democratic Socialists of America, which, stands for a lot of things, including abolishing prisons, providing free gender-affirming care to anyone who desires it. But the glue of this group after October 7th has been radical anti-Israel politics. This is a group with which Zohran Mamdani is a proud member of, that after the recent ceasefire between Israel and Hamas, the Democratic Socialists of America opposed this ceasefire. I think it's fair to say that they are not pro-peace after you read the statement that they released recently. And so this is not business as usual, and it has major implications for the Democratic Party.
Mm-hmm. I mean, as you mentioned, Mamdani, he's a very controversial figure, but he is enjoying tremendous popularity despite his views, or perhaps maybe because of his views. I mean, what is his appeal to Democratic voters?
One thing I want to add is that not only is he wildly beloved in New York, but arguably a meaningful portion of his coalition includes Jewish New Yorkers, Jewish New Yorkers who identify as anti-Zionist. And so that has been a major driving force of his coalition, and making sure that it disarms the accusation, which at times I think is valid, of anti-Semitism, because this is a candidate who he claims to be very, deeply concerned about anti-Semitism, and yet often doesn't believe that anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism. And so he has said things like he wants to increase hate crime prevention funding by 800%. Well, what good is that if you consider most anti-Zionist actions not, acts of bigotry and hatred, but just political statements against Israel?
Absolutely, and we've seen in recent days as well, Mamdani posing for a photo with one of the unindicted co-conspirators in the 1993 World Trade Center bombings. We've seen him refuse to condemn chants like "globalize the Intifada," which is basically a call to terrorism. And I have to ask, how can New Yorkers who lived through 9/11, the most horrific terror attack on the United States in history, how can New Yorkers vote for someone like that? I mean, it just doesn't really make sense to many here in Israel and around the world.
To be honest, I'm not quite sure it makes sense to me. Right now, I'm in the middle of reporting on, furthering that story. We reported on this over the weekend that he appeared next to this imam from Brooklyn who has these links to terror. He's never been charged with anything, but people who attended his mosque have been involved in terrorist attacks. And so Zohran Mamdani, I think how a lot of his supporters rationalize this is I think they consider the accusations to be racist. That is what I've seen. That is how I've seen his supporters rationalize this, because I don't think they can accept it on face value. And so that is how I've seen them respond to this, is they're brushing off these accusations as racist.
And, I want to ask, because just yesterday, there was a poll that was released showing that there's still a chance for Mamdani to lose this election in a one-on-one with Andrew Cuomo if the third candidate, Silva, would drop out of the race. I mean, how likely is that to happen now?
Yeah. So, all day I get calls from Cuomo donors. Cuomo is the former governor of New York, who he lost the Democratic primary to Zohran Mamdani, but he still is on the ticket. He's running as an independent on this party, Fight and Deliver. But I want to be clear, a lot of this, when you look at the actual ballot, the paper ballot that voters will be presented with on November 4th, and early voting also starts soon here, it becomes really clear how much of an uphill battle this is, if not an impossible battle for Cuomo. Because, first, in the first column, you have the Democratic nominee, Zohran Mamdani. Then you have Curtis Sliwa, the Republican nominee. Well, way over on the other side of the ballot is Cuomo on the Fight and Deliver line. And even if Curtis Sliwa does drop out, he is still going to appear on the ballot. There's no way to take his name off of the ballot. Jim Walden, an independent, is going to appear on the ballot. The current sitting mayor, Eric Adams, even though he's dropped out, is still going to appear on the ballot. And so it's very hard to think that, okay, even if this poll shows, that Cuomo, it does not show Cuomo beating Mamdani. It shows Cuomo within 4 points of Mamdani if Curtis Sliwa were to drop out. Well, if all those things happen, when you look at the ballot and you realize all these names are still going to be on there, it makes it really tough to see how Cuomo could pull ahead.
All right, well, we will, of course, continue to follow the New York City mayoral election 2 weeks away. Olivia Reingold from the Free Press, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
And turning to sports, we're citing serious security concerns for its fans. Maccabi Tel Aviv's soccer team has announced it will waive its allocation of away tickets for next week's Europa League match against Aston Villa in Birmingham. In a statement, the club said the safety and security of our fans is our top priority. Maccabi added that hateful lies and toxic rhetoric have created an atmosphere too dangerous for supporters to attend. Earlier this week, West Midlands police made the unprecedented decision to ban Maccabi Tel Aviv supporters from attending the match in Birmingham, citing serious public order and security concerns. The decision, which drew criticism from Israeli officials and football fans alike, marks a rare instance of a complete away fan ban in European competition. The club stressed its commitment to diversity and unity, noting that its players and fans include Muslims, Christians, and Jews. It also thanked the British government for reviewing the police decision that led to the fan ban and expressed hope that the team will one day return to play in Birmingham under safer conditions. And now let's take a look at the weather forecast. Clear skies are expected around most of the country tonight, with temperatures reaching lows of 20 degrees Celsius or 67 degrees Fahrenheit. Then tomorrow we'll see clear skies alongside steady temperatures with highs of 31 degrees Celsius or 87 degrees Fahrenheit. And that's a wrap for today's news. For the latest updates from Israel on all your devices, be sure to follow our ILTV channels and our new live channel. And you can also catch us on Screen IL with 24/7 live coverage. Stay informed with the latest news straight from the heart of Israel. I'm Ladar Gravelazi. Be well, and thank you so much for watching.